So, school's out and I finally have time for another one of these. And this one popped up, which is a fascinating subject that I encounter a lot of times. A lot of times.
Viper has been an underplayed agent since release, and even after having received buff after buff for the last year, she's still one of the least played agents in the game with some niche play on maps like Icebox.
Pick rates does not equal to performance. If you're buffing an agent based solely on pick rates, then you have a narrow view of the issue. While Viper's pick rate is in the 20s to 30s range, she wins as much as Skye, Jet, and Brimstone. Oh, I'm sorry, where's Omen right now? Oh yeah, he's down here. And regarding niche picks, controller defaults exist, which on principle means what one of them can do, the others can also do. The remaining variation is the rest of their utilities. Maps like Icebox and Breeze as new additions does not make her niche. They're literally just her strongest maps because of the open spaces.
Remember how I said that one of Viper's strengths is that she's a controller? Well, that strength happens to be a bit of a disadvantage in some ways for her as well. Since controllers are so important, especially when attacking sites, you need one that can do their job well. And agents like Omen, Brimstone, and even Astra are just better at smoking off choke points and helping your team push onto a site.
Clarifying once again that controllers share the same defaults in smoking off sites, and each one of them does this job correctly. What kind of a controller would an agent be if Riot hadn't tested them and given them the ability to smoke off the vital angles for each map?
Because of this, she's kind of outclassed in her own role and acts less like a real controller and more like a Sentinel.
Oh god, not again. The glaring technical differences between Sentinels and controllers on both attacker and defender side is their range. On defender side, I'd agree that Viper has great stalling power that even rivals Sentinels. 16 seconds of toxins and 2 mollies that last 13 seconds collectively. On attacker side, you can't interchange Viper with any of the Sentinels. While Sentinels do have lineups to send some utility forwards, like Slorbs, Nanoswarms, Cyber Cages, and other things, Viper's got her entire kit at area control. The wall's range is visibly obvious. The mollies are known for their post plants and staring at the sky from spawn. And the poison orb is pretty self-explanatory on what angle you want to throw it at.
Another big reason that Viper has such a low pick rate is that she's very difficult to play. She requires a lot of time in the practice range to learn lineups for both her orb and mollies. On top of that, she has a skill set unique to her since her abilities don't really have cooldowns but instead have a resource meter. This means that players trying to pick up Viper have to learn an entirely new skill set just to be able to manage this resource effectively, which just makes learning how to play her even more of a time commitment.
The Toxin Bar is literally a timer worth 16 seconds and a visual aid for lineups. It's not some Civ 6 levels of resource management. Because in patch 1.04, her toxins were given a uniform rate of 16 seconds, even if both Toxin Screen and Poison Orbs are active at the same time. I've seen this countless of times on Discord. People are still confused because they just don't read the patch notes. And patch 1.04 was over a year ago.
Alternatively, if you look at a character like Brim, if you know where you should smoke, all you need to do is press E, left click a couple of times, and then press right click and all of your smokes are dropped exactly where you want them.
I've shown you all the defaults, and that basically invalidates this whole other controllers can smoke off each angle better. This is just asking for an easier, way easier way to get value when you already have the tools being provided to you. Read the patch notes. If you make an inconsistent smoke lineup, like this shitty one from Pro Guides, or this shitty one from Pro Guides, or this shitty one from Pro Guides, then that barely counts for the ability itself and more of the player. You don't want Viper buffs. You just want an Omen V2.
Finally, Viper's abilities require a lot of commitment on your end to use. As soon as you place down your wall, you're unable to move it somewhere else. And this forces you to either commit to the site where you place down your wall or push a site without any cover. And even though you can pick up her orb, you need to be within really close range of it to be able to do that. So if you throw the orb near the back of a site, you won't really be able to pick it up and rotate to another site. This also makes it hard for a team with a Viper as the only controller to default and play slow, because for example on Haven,
you can't just have an agent that just does everything with no setback. Omen's got recharging smokes and they're easy to place, but he's not given an AoE ability, unlike the other controllers who have their own mollies. Brimstone smokes last the longest, but you have to commit to the site and you only have 3 charges for the smokes. And Viper's got the most uptime per round with her smokes, and they also deal damage, but you have to commit to your site.
for example, on Haven, Omen could smoke mid while his team tries to play for a pick or gain ground on a site, and then when they're ready to commit to that site, he'll have 2 smokes ready to execute on that site. Where if Viper throws her orb mid and tries to default, she won't have access to it for the rest of the round in most cases.
What? You see, the trick there is not using your poison orb like an idiot, and you gotta use your toxin screen instead.
I came up with 3 ideas for changes that could help fix these issues, all revolving around her orb. 1. When you equip the orb, there needs to be an indicator on the UI that shows the trajectory of the orb, similar to something like Raze's grenade, but a little more accurate so you can easily see where it will land. 2. There should also be an indicator on the map to show where the orb will land when you throw it. And 3. Viper should be able to recall her orb from anywhere on the map, similar to Killjoy.
Oh my god. Let me tell you why your buff ideas suck. It's because we already have these! You know, I'm just starting to think now that maybe people just don't read patch notes, ever. Okay. Buff idea number 1 and 2 is awful because we already have them as practice tools. And buff number 3 is redundant because you just literally described what Astra does. These buffs suck because you're trying to fix things that aren't problems. You can't have an agent that just has everything because it'd be a balance problem. And you don't buff an agent based on pick rates alone. You look at other aspects and you just see that it becomes a completely different story when you buff her like this. A bit of a tangent. You keep complaining about Viper's commitment to a site, but somehow leave details like Brimstone does the same with just 3 charges of smokes. He has to commit to that site, and he can't recall any of his shit. But no, let's moan about Viper's wall and I should be able to pick it up. Buff idea 1 and 2 is the easy way. You want it to be the easy way every time. Brimstone, point and click. Omen, point and click. Astra, point and click. And buff idea number 3 is to compensate for your mistake of not pushing the site that you just smoked off. Which, considering the stopping power of those smokes and the coverage of the wall effectively acting as multiple smokes at once, is kinda stupid. Why wouldn't you push that? And again, same can be said about Brim smokes because he has a limited amount but they last so long. Overall, the buff ideas and the reasoning as to why people don't want to play Viper boils down to her skill floor, and changing that brings no benefit. As an example, how busted would it be if Soba was able to point and click his arrows like a Brim or an Omen smoke? Suddenly you're left with a character with great disruption with a dead easy mechanic. It won't be fun and it won't be balanced. Maybe I'll make more lineup videos. And one specific guide down the line if y'all want to.